Hi there, welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight we're standing in your childhood bedroom, staring at an envelope that's about to change everything. The year is 1942, and that official government seal on the paper means only one thing. Uncle Sam wants you, and he wants you now. You probably won't survive this intact, honestly. Some of your friends definitely won't. But hey, at least you'll get 3 square meals a day and all the cigarettes you can smoke, right? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. All right, let's begin the story. You're holding that draft notice with hands that won't quite stop shaking. Greetings, it begins. Like your old friends or something. The Selective Service Board has determined that you, John Q, public, age 21, single, and reasonably healthy, are exactly what America needs to win this war. You've got 14 days to report to the induction center downtown. 14 days to say goodbye to everything you've ever known. Your mother finds you sitting on the edge of your bed, still clutching the letter. She doesn't cry. Not yet. Anyway, she just smooths down your hair like she did when you were 6 and had nightmares about the monster in the closet. Except now, the monsters are real, and they're building tanks in factories across the ocean. We'll have a nice dinner Sunday, she says, voice steady as steel. Invite the Johnsons from next door. Mary Johnson's boy got his notice last week. The next 2 weeks blur past like a movie reel on fast forward. You quit your job at the factory. They're used to it by now. Half the workforce has already shipped out. Your boss, Mr. Peterson, shakes your hand and slips you an extra week's pay for cigarettes overseas. You spend evenings with your girl, Betty, making promises you're not sure you can keep. She gives you a photo of herself in that blue dress you like, the one she wore to the spring dance. You tuck it into your wallet, right behind your social security card. Historians still argue whether the draft was truly random or if local boards played favorites. Keeping essential workers and married men home longer. What's certain is that by 1942, Uncle Sam was pulling in about 200,000 men per month. You're just one more body for the machine. At night, you lie awake wondering what it'll be like. Your uncle fought in the Great War, the one they said would end all wars. What a joke that turned out to be. He never talks about it much, just stares into his coffee when anyone asks. Sometimes you catch him flinching at backfiring cars. That's your future now, assuming you have one. You try to prepare. You do push-ups on your bedroom floor until your arms give out. Spoiler alert, it won't be nearly enough. You practice making your bed with military corners, bouncing a quarter off the blanket like you've seen in the movies. You even get a haircut, thinking maybe if you show up looking sharp, they'll go easier on you. Sweet, naive civilian you. The morning of your departure arrives grey and drizzling. Your father drives you to the induction center in the old Ford, neither of you speaking much. The radio plays Tommy Dorsey, and you memorize every note, knowing it might be years before you hear music like this again. Downtown, there's already a crowd, dozens of young men with the same shell-shocked expression, clutching small suitcases and paper bags of sandwiches their mothers packed. You get in line with 99 other inductees. Some joke nervously, others stand silent. One kid, he can't be more than 18, is actively crying, and nobody gives him grief about it. You're all scared. The difference is just who's better at hiding it. Inside, it's all efficiency and processing. Strip down, turn your head and cough, get poked and prodded by doctors who've seen 1,000 of you already today, They check your teeth like you're a horse at auction. Fun fact most people don't know. The Army rejected more men for dental problems than almost any other medical issue. Bad teeth meant you couldn't eat Army rations. And a soldier who can't eat can't fight. You passed the physical. Congratulations. You're officially government property now. They hand you a serial number to memorize. From this moment on, you're not John anymore. You're Private 327568449, and you'd better not forget it. An officer with a face like granite tells your group you're heading to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, for basic training. Mississippi in summer. This just keeps getting better. The train ride to Camp Shelby takes 36 hours, and you spend most of it pressed against a window that won't open, breathing in the collective stench of 100 nervous young men. Someone's already started a poker game using matchsticks for chips. Another guy pulls out a harmonica and plays "I'll Be Seeing You," until a bigger guy threatens to shove it somewhere anatomically improbable. You drift in and out of sleep, jolting awake every time the train lurches, already practicing for the light sleeping that'll keep you alive later. Mississippi hits you like a wet slap when you finally stumble off the train. It's only May, but the humidity makes you feel like you're breathing through a hot, damp towel. Drill sergeants are already screaming before your feet hit the platform. Move it, move it, move it. You think this is a Sunday social. My grandmother moves faster and she's been dead 10 years. Welcome to hell's front porch. Population, you and several thousand other sorry souls. They load you onto trucks like cattle, and you bounce down dirt roads toward a collection of wooden barracks that look like they were thrown together by blind carpenters in a hurry. Which, fun fact, they basically were. The Army built most training camps in about 12 weeks flat, cutting every corner possible. Your new home is a 2-story wooden barracks with all the charm of a chicken coop. 40 men crammed into a space meant for 20. Double-stacked bunks so close you can hear the guy above you breathing. You're assigned a footlocker, a wall peg, and that's it for personal space. The latrine is 100 yards away, which seems fine until you realize you'll have exactly 4 minutes to shower, shave, and shit every morning. Then comes the gear. They march you through supply like an assembly line, uniforms that don't fit, boots that definitely don't fit, and approximately 17 different items you have no idea how to use. This is your shelter half, barks a supply sergeant who looks like he's been doing this since the Civil War. Lose it and you'll be sleeping under the stars, the wet, mosquito-filled stars. The first morning starts at 04:30. That's 4:30 a.m. for you civilians still thinking in normal people time. A drill sergeant bursts through the door banging a trash can lid and screaming creative combinations of profanity that would make a sailor blush. You've got exactly 5 minutes to dress and make your bunk. Your bunk fails inspection because the quarter doesn't bounce high enough. Everyone's does. That means push-ups for breakfast. Physical training is where they start breaking you down to build you back up. Except the breaking down part seems way more thorough than any building up. You run until you puke, then run some more. Push-ups until your arms turn to jelly. Jumping jacks in the Mississippi heat until you're seeing stars. One kid from Connecticut passes out face first into the red clay. They drag him to the shade, pour water on his head, and he's back in formation 10 minutes later. The obstacle course is specially designed by sadists who apparently spent their childhoods pulling wings off flies. You crawl under barbed wire through mud that smells like it's been fermenting since 1918. You climb walls that get higher every time you look at them. There's something called the tough one, a rope climb over a water pit that claims at least 3 casualties per platoon. Historians still debate whether these courses were based on actual combat conditions or just some officer's fever dream after reading too many Tarzan novels. weapons training is where things get real. They hand you an M1 Garand rifle, 9.5 pounds of wood and steel that you'll learn to love more than your own mother. "This is your rifle," screams the drill instructor. "There are many like it, but this one is yours. Your rifle is your best friend. It is your life." You learn to disassemble and reassemble it blindfolded, because apparently the Germans are considerate enough to only attack in broad daylight when you can see what you're doing. Here's a detail they don't put in the recruitment posters. You spend more time cleaning than shooting. Every speck of dust is a personal insult to your drill sergeant's mother. You clean your rifle, your boots, your barracks, the latrines, and then you clean them all again. One guy suggests this is all pointless busy work. He spends the next 6 hours scrubbing the parade ground with a toothbrush, really contemplating the value of keeping his opinions to himself. The food is, well, calling it food is charitable. Mystery meat swimming in grease, potatoes that could double as ammunition, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. You learn to eat fast because there's always someone screaming at you to move along. The mess hall becomes a competitive speed-eating arena where you shovel down 3,000 calories in 8 minutes flat. Surprisingly, you're hungry enough to lick the plate clean. 6 weeks of basic training finally end, and somehow you've survived the transformation from soft civilian to something resembling a soldier. Your unit gets orders. You're shipping out to England. The train ride to New York feels different this time. You actually know how to keep your gear organized, how to sleep sitting up, and how to play poker well enough to win back those cigarettes you lost in week 2. The guy with the harmonica learned to play something other than sentimental songs. Thank God. New York Harbor is a madhouse of controlled chaos. Thousands of soldiers mill around the docks. Mountains of supplies get loaded by crane. And there, in the distance, Lady Liberty watches you all leave, probably wondering if you'll ever see her again. You're processed through Camp Shanks, nicknamed Last Stop USA, with the kind of gallows humor you're getting used to, where they check your teeth again, update your will, and make sure you've got your dog tags, 2 of them, one to identify your body and one to, well, let's just say it involves your mouth and leave it at that. The ship that'll carry you across the Atlantic is the Queen Mary, though she looks nothing like the luxury liner in those pre-war travel posters. They've painted her grey, stripped out all the fancy furniture, and crammed in enough bunks to hold 15,000 men. That's not a typo. You'll be sleeping in shifts, hot bunking with 2 other guys rotating through the same narrow shelf they're calling a bed. The whole ship reeks of fuel oil, sweat, and the growing awareness that U-boats are out there, waiting. You're assigned to D-deck, 4 levels below the waterline. If a torpedo hits, you mentally calculate your chances of making it topside. The math isn't encouraging. Your bunk is a canvas stretched over a metal frame, stacked 6 high with about 18 inches of clearance. The guy above you weighs at least 250 pounds and sounds like he's digesting a live bear when he sleeps. This is your home for the next 5 days. The ship pulls out at night. Loose lips sink ships, so departure times are classified. You manage to squeeze onto deck with 1,000 other guys, watching Manhattan's lights fade into darkness. Some joker starts singing, "I'll be seeing you," until multiple people tell him to shut the hell up. The ship starts this rolling motion that seems gentle at first. Give it an hour. Seasickness hits your unit like a biblical plague. The ship's doctor hands out little packets of pills that don't work, and buckets that aren't nearly big enough. The mess hall serves mutton, grey, greasy mutton that looks like it died of natural causes sometime during the last war. One whiff sends half your buddies racing for the rail. You learn that the best place to vomit is downwind, a lesson some learn harder than others. Here's something the history books usually skip. The Queen Mary could outrun any U-boat, but only if she kept zigzagging. Every few minutes, the whole ship lurches into a turn that sends unsecured gear sliding across the deck and stomachs heading north. You're trying to sleep when wham, sudden 30-degree list to starboard. The fat guy above you nearly crushes you to death. Someone's rifle breaks loose and clatters down the companionway like a pinball. The British came up with a delightful system where they served 2 meals a day to accommodate all 15,000 of you. Breakfast is at 0600 or 1400, dinner at 1000 or 1800. You stand in line for 2 hours to get your grey mutton and reconstituted potatoes. Eat in 10 minutes. Then go stand in another line for the head. That's Navy talk for bathroom, which you learn after asking where the latrine is and getting laughed at by every sailor in earshot. Historians still debate whether packing soldiers like sardines was militarily necessary or just typical military efficiency. What's not debatable is that German U-boats were sinking ships left and right. Over 1,000 Allied vessels in 1942 alone. Your convoy includes destroyers that periodically drop depth charges, each explosion making the whole ship ring like a bell and reminding you that you're basically a floating target. To pass time, you play endless poker games, write letters you can't send until you reach England, and attend mandatory lectures on how not to embarrass America when you meet the locals. The British have been fighting since 1939. Drones a lieutenant who looks like he's never left Wisconsin. They've been bombed, rationed, and they're tired. Do not complain about warm beer, bad food, or the weather. Someone in the back mutters that he's been practicing with army food already. On day 3, the ship's alarm goes off, submarine alert. You're ordered to your muster station, which involves climbing over approximately 500 other terrified soldiers trying to reach their own stations. You stand there in your life jacket, wondering if you remember those swimming lessons from Boy Scout camp. The destroyer escorts race around dropping depth charges that boom through the hull. After an hour, the all clear sounds, false alarm, or at least that's what they tell you. Land never looks so beautiful as when you first spot the coast of Scotland through the morning mist. After 5 days of zigzagging across the Atlantic, your legs have forgotten what solid ground feels like. The Queen Mary pulls into the Firth of Clyde, and you stumble down the gangplank like a drunk at closing time, kissing the dock until a British MP tells you to shift your ass, yank, welcome to the United Kingdom, where even the welcomes sound like insults. They load you onto trains that make American railroads look spacious. British compartments seat 8, but they've crammed in 12, plus full gear. You're headed south to somewhere called Tidworth, which sounds quaint until you arrive and discover it's basically Kansas with worse weather and warm beer. The camp is a collection of Nissen huts, those half-cylinder metal buildings that look like giant soup cans, cut lengthwise and dropped in a muddy field. Your home for the foreseeable future is Hut 23B, which you share with 24 other guys who all snore in different keys. The British built these things with efficiency in mind, not comfort. There's a single coal stove in the middle that either roasts the 4 guys nearest it or leaves everyone else freezing. You learn to sleep fully dressed, including your boots, because English mornings make Mississippi winters feel tropical. The first morning, you're introduced to British Army rations. Breakfast is powdered eggs that taste like yellow rubber, tea strong enough to float a horseshoe, and something they call bacon, but looks more like strips of boiled leather. A British cook cheerfully informs you that you're eating better than most civilians, who get 1 egg per week if they're lucky. Suddenly, Army chowback at Camp Shelby seems like fine dining. Training starts immediately because apparently you weren't quite miserable enough yet. The British have been fighting Germans for 3 years and have opinions about American training methods. Right, you lot think you know about combat, says a sergeant major with a face like a clenched fist and scars suggesting he's earned his skepticism. Jerry's been practicing on us since 39. Time you learned what real fighting looks like. Cue the most brutal training regime you've encountered yet. You learn house-to-house fighting in bombed-out villages they've kept specifically for training. The British instructors have this disturbing habit of using live ammunition for authenticity. Nothing says, "Pay attention," like actual bullets cracking past your helmet. One instructor, missing 2 fingers and most of his left ear, demonstrates how to clear a room with grenades. The Jerrys don't play fair, he notes, almost admiringly. Neither should you. The weather is basically one long grey complaint. It rains sideways, upways, and sometimes in directions that defy physics. Your boots are perpetually soaked, growing interesting new forms of fungus. You develop a cough that sounds like a dying seal. The British call this lovely spring weather, which makes you wonder what they consider bad weather. Everything is rationed, including humour apparently. Relations with the locals are complicated. The standing joke is that Americans are overpaid, oversexed, and over here. You make 3 times what a British soldier earns, which doesn't endear you to them. The local girls, however, seem more appreciative of your relative wealth and access to chocolate. You learn to trade cigarettes and candy for everything from laundry service to dance partners at the local church socials. Historians still argue about the cultural impact of 2 million Americans descending on Britain. But one thing's certain, you're about as subtle as a brass band in a library. Your unit manages to get banned from 3 pubs in the first month. Not for fighting, surprisingly, but for singing bawdy versions of God Save the King after discovering warm beer isn't improved by volume consumption. The training intensifies as spring arrives. You practice amphibious landings in the Channel, which is somehow colder than the Atlantic. They load you onto landing craft that bob like corks in a bathtub, everyone puking their guts out before you even hit the beach. The British beaches are covered in obstacles and mines, simulated ones, mostly. Though nobody's entirely sure after that incident with 2nd Platoon. Here's a detail they classified until the 1970s. Half your training is deliberately wrong. They're preparing for an invasion, but can't let you know where. So you practice taking cliffs when you'll actually hit flat beaches, or rehearse night operations when the real thing will be at dawn. The brass figures confuse soldiers are better than informed prisoners if you get captured. You get weekend passes occasionally, taking the train to London to see what the fuss is about. The city looks like someone took a giant bite out of it. Whole blocks reduced to rubble from the Blitz. But the pubs are open, the girls still dance, and there's this weird cheerful fatalism in the air. Hitler missed me yesterday. Probably miss me tomorrow too. Shrugs a barmaid serving warm bitter in a pub missing half its roof. Spring of 1944 arrives with the worst kept secret in military history. Everyone knows the invasion is coming. The only questions are where and when. Your unit gets relocated to a SEAL camp near Portsmouth, surrounded by MPs who shoot first and check papers later. Once you're in, you're not coming out until it's time to cross the Channel. They call it a sausage camp because you're stuffed in and sealed tight. Even the latrine rumours are classified. The build-up is staggering. Every field in southern England sprouts tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces like metallic mushrooms. The sky buzzes with more planes than you've ever seen. Fighters, bombers, weird gliders that look like flying coffins. Ships pack every harbour from Cornwall to Kent. Local farmers complain their cows won't give milk from all the noise. One old-timer tells you he hasn't seen this many ships since the Spanish Armada, though he might be exaggerating his age a bit. Your days blur into endless equipment checks and briefings. Clean your rifle for the 1000th time. Waterproof everything twice. Then do it again, because Sergeant thinks your first 2 attempts were, shit, a baby could do better. You're issued new gear including seasickness pills. They still don't work. Vomit bags, too small. And morphine syrettes, hopefully unnecessary. Everyone gets a cricket clicker for identification in the dark, leading to nights that sound like an insect orchestra tuning up. The briefings get progressively more serious. First, it's just terrain models under sheets. Somewhere in France, they say. Fooling nobody. Then come the detailed sand tables showing a stretch of beach with German positions marked in disturbing detail. Pillboxes, machine gun nests, artillery positions. Some intelligence officer cheerfully points out the overlapping fields of fire. Jerry's had 4 years to prepare, he notes. Should be quite sporting. British understatement will be the death of you, possibly literally. They show you photos of the beach obstacles, Element C, Belgian gates, hedgehogs made from crossed steel beams, all designed to rip the bottom out of landing craft or channel you into kill zones. The Germans have thought of everything, including flooding the fields behind the beaches. If you make it off the beach, the briefer says, emphasizing that if, you'll be wading through water up to your chest. Try not to drown. It would be embarrassing after surviving the initial landing. June arrives with the weather that can't make up its mind. Your unit's been sealed in camp for 2 weeks now, playing poker with invasion money, French francs that look like Monopoly cash, writing letters home you can't send, and trying not to think about those casualty estimates you overheard. 30% losses expected in the first wave. You do the math on your unit. It's not encouraging. Then comes June 4th. You're loaded onto trucks, driven to the harbour, and there it is. You're home for the Channel crossing. An LST, landing ship, tank, that looks like a floating shoebox. LST 325 to be specific. Already loaded with tanks, half tracks, and about 300 other guys trying to look braver than they feel. You board in the rain because of course it's raining. This is England. The ship is cramped beyond belief. The tank deck reeks of diesel and fear sweat. You find a spot between a Sherman tank and a half-track, spreading your gear on the steel deck that's already slick with oil and seawater. The Navy guys seem competent but grim. One sailor, chewing tobacco like cud, mentions this is his 3rd invasion. Gets easier. He lies through brown teeth. But then the weather turns completely to shit. Winds that could knock over a house. Waves that make the Queen Mary look stable. The invasion's postponed. You sit in that floating metal coffin for another day. Seasickness claiming more casualties than the Germans so far. Someone starts a rumour you're going back to port. Someone else says it's cancelled entirely. A lieutenant threatens court-martials for anyone spreading defeatist talk, though he looks pretty green himself. Historians still debate whether Eisenhower nearly called off the invasion entirely. What you know is that June 5th dawns marginally less awful, and suddenly engines are starting, anchors raising. The harbour is organised chaos. Hundreds of ships jockeying for position like the world's deadliest traffic jam. Battleships that look like floating cities. Destroyers darting between slower vessels. And everywhere these ungainly LSTs packed with democracy's last hope. Your chaplain holds an impromptu service on the tank deck. Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and one Buddhist from California all packed together, praying to whoever might be listening. He reads from Psalms about walking through the valley of the shadow of death, which seems a bit on the nose. Then he offers to hear confessions. The line stretches halfway around the ship. Nobody's taking chances. As darkness falls, you're really moving now. The channel's still rough, and soon the deck is slick with more than just seawater. You try to sleep, but between the engine noise, the waves pounding the hull, and your imagination running wild, it's impossible. You check your equipment for the 100th time. Rifle, ammunition, first aid kit, lucky rabbit's foot your girl sent. Dawn can't be more than a few hours away now. The engines throttle back around 0300, and you know this is it. Through the cargo doors, you glimpse other ships materializing from the darkness, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, stretching to the horizon. The bombardment starts at 0550, and it's like God himself is throwing a tantrum. Naval shells scream overhead, making the air itself hurt. The battleship Texas is somewhere behind you, firing 14-inch shells that sound like freight trains flying past. Each explosion on shore lights up the beach in snapshot moments of hell. You're in the second wave, which sounds better than first, until you realize it just means the Germans will be fully awake and angry when you arrive. The Navy guys lower the ramp on your LST, and tanks start grinding forward, disappearing into smaller landing craft. Your turn comes too soon. You waddle down the ramp weighted with 60 pounds of gear, rifle held high, trying not to think about how swimming wasn't really covered in basic training. The Higgins boat, official designation LCVP, but nobody calls it that, is basically a floating bathtub with a motor. 36 of you pack in like vertical sardines. The Navy coxswain, who can't be older than 19, looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Waves immediately start breaking over the sides. That seasickness from the Atlantic crossing? Child's play compared to this washing machine ride through 4-foot swells toward a beach where people are very invested in killing you. The run to shore takes forever and no time at all. You're soaked, frozen, and most guys are actively vomiting. The boat to your left takes a direct hit from something big. 1 second it's there, next second it's matchsticks and screaming. Your boat lurches away from the debris. Someone's praying in Italian. Someone else just keeps saying shit, 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 like it's a protective mantra. Both seem equally effective. Then you see it. Omaha Beach. It looks nothing like the sand tables. The bombardment that was supposed to crater the beach and destroy the defenses might as well have been throwing pebbles. The beach obstacles are intact. The pillboxes are very much operational, and the air is full of things that want to kill you. Tracers arc across the water like deadly fireworks. Artillery shells throw up geysers of water. The boat in front of you hits a mine and simply ceases to exist. Your coxswain is screaming he can't get closer. The obstacles are too thick. The ramp drops and it's still 50 yards to shore through water that's chest deep and cold enough to stop your heart. Go, 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 screams your sergeant. And training takes over. You plunge into the channel, rifle held overhead, moving forward because forward is the only direction that makes sense anymore. The water is shockingly cold and immediately fills with bullets. They zip past with little pops, like kids throwing stones. Except stones don't turn the guy next to you into red mist. You're moving in nightmare slow motion, weighted down by waterlogged gear, fighting waves that want to knock you over. Machine guns traverse the beach in precise patterns. You learn to move between bursts, diving underwater when you hear that distinctive MG42 buzz, Hitler's buzzsaw. They called it in training. should have called it Hitler's meat grinder. Bodies float past face down, rocking in the surf. Some are missing pieces you'd rather not identify. You step on something soft and don't look down. The beach seems miles wide. Your unit scattered. Half might still be in the boat. The other half might be dead. You can't tell because looking around means stopping. And stopping means dying. Finally, blessedly. You hit the shingle. That line of fist-sized stones where the beach meets the seawall. You crawl behind it with a dozen other gasping, soaked soldiers and realize you've been holding your breath for the last 100 yards. The sergeant who was screaming orders. He's face down in the surf, not screaming anymore. A medic, brave or stupid, runs back to check him and gets cut in half by machine gun fire. Historians still argue about exact casualty figures for the first wave at Omaha. What you know is that your boat had 36 men and maybe 12 made it to the shingle. The beach behind you looks like a khaki carpet spotted with red. Equipment floats everywhere. Packs, rifles, bodies. A tank burns at the waterline. Crew nowhere to be seen. Another tank made it 10 feet onto the beach before taking a direct hit. Its turret points at an impossible angle. You're alive, somehow, soaked, terrified, probably in shock, but alive. A lieutenant you don't recognize low crawls over, bleeding from somewhere under his helmet. "We stay here, we die," he shouts over the noise. "Follow me." And because the alternative is lying here until a mortar finds you, you follow. You charge up that beach through the worst day of your life, toward Germans who've had 4 years to prepare for this exact moment. Your rabbit's foot is somewhere in the channel, but maybe that's okay. Lucky Charms don't stop bullets anyway. You're off the beach but far from safe. The Norman countryside that looks so pleasant in those reconnaissance photos turns out to be Hitler's personal maze of death. Every field is bordered by hedgerows, ancient earthen walls topped with thick vegetation that might as well be concrete fortifications. The French have been building these things since the Romans, creating perfect defensive positions that your tanks can't punch through and your artillery can't spot past. Welcome to the bocage, where every 50 yards costs lives. Your unit, or what's left of it, spends the first night in a ditch that some optimist calls a defensive position. You're down to maybe 40% strength, and half the survivors are walking wounded. The lieutenant who led you off the beach took shrapnel in the throat an hour later. Command keeps changing hands as officers have this disturbing habit of dying. By dawn, you're taking orders from a sergeant who was a corporal yesterday and might be dead by lunch. The Germans have turned every hedgerow into a fortress. They've had years to dig in, creating interlocking fields of fire that would make your training instructors weep with envy. You advance field by field in a lethal game of leapfrog. One squad provides covering fire while another rushes the next hedgerow. Except rushing through Norman mud, while Germans shoot at you, is more like a terrified waddle. The casualty rate is catastrophic. You stop learning replacement names after the 3rd or 4th batch. Here's something they didn't cover at Camp Shelby. The Germans are really good at this. Their MG-42 machine guns can fire 1,200 rounds per minute, turning air into lead. Their 88 mm guns serve triple duty: anti-aircraft, anti-tank, and anti-U. They've got these Nebelwerfer rocket launchers that make a sound like the world tearing apart. The troops call them screaming memes, which sounds almost cute until you're on the receiving end. Tank support is supposed to help, but the Shermans have this nasty habit of brewing up, burning like torches when hit. The crews call them Ronsons after the lighter, because they light up every time. You watch a Sherman nose into a gap in the hedgerow and immediately take an 88 round through the front armor. The crew that bails out is on fire. One of them runs 3 steps before a sniper drops him. The others don't make it that far. The solution comes from a sergeant who used to work in a Louisiana sawmill. He suggests welding steel teeth onto the front of tanks, turning them into glorified lawnmowers that can chew through hedgerows. Rhino tanks, they call them. And suddenly, you're not stuck in every field playing German shooting gallery. Progress jumps from yards per day to maybe a whole mile. At this rate, you'll reach Berlin sometime in 1987. Weather becomes another enemy. Norman rain turns roads into swamps and foxholes into swimming pools. You haven't been dry since D-Day. Your feet are white and swollen, starting to rot in your boots. Trenchfoot claims more casualties than German snipers some days. The medics run out of dry socks, which become more valuable than ammunition. You learn to stuff newspaper in your boots, when you can find newspaper that isn't already sodden. The French civilians are a mixed blessing. Most are genuinely happy to see you, offering wine and cheese they can't spare. But some villages got flattened by pre-invasion bombing, and those survivors look at you with eyes that have seen too much. One old woman spits at your feet and calls you something in French that doesn't need translation. You can't blame her. Liberation looks a lot like destruction from ground level. Historians still debate the hedgerow tactics, arguing whether the Allies should have anticipated the bocage problem. What you know is that intelligence reports describing sunken lanes bordered by hedges didn't quite capture the reality of 8-foot walls of earth and roots that eat men and machines alike. Every field becomes a separate battle. Every hedgerow costs friends. You develop a sixth sense for danger. The particular whistle of incoming artillery, the click of a rifle bolt in the distance, that prickling sensation when a sniper's watching. You learn that German snipers prefer officers and radio men, so you stop saluting and hide the radio antennas. Everyone starts looking equally scruffy and anonymous. Rank insignia becomes a death sentence. By late June, you've advanced maybe 10 miles from the beach. Your division has taken over 100% casualties. Not killed, but killed, wounded, and missing combined exceed your original strength. Replacements arrive looking clean and scared, lasting on average about 3 days before becoming casualties or veterans. There's no middle ground in the hedgerows. You either learn fast or die faster. The Norman fields are beautiful in an abstract way. Green hedges, red poppies, white clouds. If you could ignore the burned-out tanks, bloated cattle, and fresh graves marked with rifles stuck bayonet first in the ground, you're making history, they tell you, pushing toward some town called Saint-Lô that apparently matters. All you know is you're still alive, still moving forward, and trying not to think about how many more hedgerows wait between here and Germany. Everything changes at the end of July when Patton's Third Army breaks through at Saint-Lô. After 2 months of bloody hedgerow fighting, suddenly you're racing across France like someone lit a fire under your ass. The German lines crack, then crumble, then collapse entirely. Your division, mounted on anything with wheels, tanks, trucks, captured German vehicles, French farm equipment, joins the mad dash east. After crawling through the bocage, moving 30 miles in a day feels like flying. The French countryside blurs past in a strange mixture of beauty and destruction. Medieval churches with their steeples blown off, chateaux turned into aid stations, wine cellars liberated with extreme prejudice. Your convoy rolls through villages where people haven't seen Americans yet, and the reaction is electric. Old men weep openly, women throw flowers, Kids run alongside begging for chocolate and cigarettes. Vive les Américains, they shout, though your high school French can't help with their rapid-fire thanks and questions. By late August, you're approaching Paris. The BBC says the French resistance has risen up, that the city's in open revolt. Your unit gets picked for the Liberation Parade, which means you spend 3 hours trying to make your uniform look presentable, considering you've been wearing it for 2 months straight, sleeping in foxholes and crawling through Norman mud. It's a lost cause, but nobody's going to care what you look like. You're liberating fucking Paris. August 25th, 1944. You'll remember this date forever. Your convoy rolls down the Champs-Élysées, and it's like the entire city has gone insane with joy. The crowds are 20 deep, singing La Marseillaise so loud it drowns out your truck engines. Women climb onto your vehicles to kiss anyone in uniform. Men press bottles of wine and champagne into your hands. You're crying. They're crying. Everyone's crying and laughing and screaming. Liberté. A beautiful French girl jumps onto your truck's running board, plants a kiss on you that would make Hollywood jealous, and disappears back into the crowd. Your buddy Thompson gets pulled off the truck entirely, vanishing into a sea of celebrating civilians. He shows up 3 hours later, lipstick covered and grinning like an idiot, with 4 bottles of cognac and a beret he doesn't remember acquiring. This is what victory tastes like: champagne and perfume and freedom. The party can't last. While you're nursing the worst hangover of your life, courtesy of French hospitality, orders come down. The Germans are retreating but not beaten. Push east, maintain pressure. Don't let them reorganize. So you leave Paris behind, its celebration continuing in your rearview mirrors, and chase the Wehrmacht toward their homeland. The advance continues at breakneck pace. Some days you cover 50 miles, stopping only when you literally run out of gas. The Liberation Tour continues through smaller cities and towns. Each one throws whatever celebration they can manage. In one village, the mayor breaks out wine hidden since 1940. In another, the local priest rings church bells that have been silent for 4 years. The Germans didn't have time to destroy everything in their retreat, so you're seeing France as it was, just with Nazi flags hastily torn down and burned in the streets. But it's not all champagne and kisses. You start finding evidence of what the Germans were really doing. Resistance fighters tortured and shot. Mass graves in forest clearings. In one town, the entire male population was executed in reprisal for sabotage. The celebrating crowd sometimes part to show you things. A basement where the Gestapo worked. Walls still stained with blood. Your liberation tour has a dark edge that champagne can't wash away. The supply lines stretch thinner with every mile. You're advancing so fast that fuel and ammunition can't keep up. Patton's army literally runs out of gas. Tanks sitting idle while you wait for the Red Ball Express. Those heroic truck drivers, many of them African American, driving day and night to keep you supplied. Historians still argue whether Eisenhower should have given Patton all the fuel to potentially end the war by Christmas. What you know is you spend a week sitting still while the Germans dig in ahead. French gratitude manifests in unexpected ways. Farmers insist you take their best livestock. One unit ahead of you reportedly liberated an entire wine warehouse and had to be forcibly sobered up. You're billeted in an actual house for the first time since England. A family in Reims who lost their son to German forced labour. The mother does your laundry and cries while mending holes in your socks. You don't need to speak French to understand grief. By September, you're approaching the German border. The party's over. The easy victories, the flowers and wine, the grateful civilians, all that stays in France. ahead lies Germany itself, where every civilian is a potential enemy and nobody's going to kiss you for showing up. You clean your rifle extra carefully now. The real fight, everyone senses, hasn't even started yet. Those parades down the Champs-Élysées feel like they happened to someone else, in some other war. This one's about to get ugly. October 1944 brings the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and sets up permanent residence. You're dug into the Hürtgen forest, a 50-square-mile nightmare of dense pine trees, steep ravines, and Germans who really don't want you there. After racing across France, you've hit a wall of trees and determination. The forest is dark even at noon, with pines so thick that artillery shells explode in the canopy, sending down lethal splinters of wood and steel. They call them tree bursts, which sounds almost poetic until you see what they do to human bodies. Your foxhole is a muddy grave you share with rainwater, fallen pine needles, and a growing suspicion that someone in headquarters has forgotten you exist. The trees block radio signals, make artillery spotting impossible, and turn every patrol into a game of blindfolded hide-and-seek, where the seekers have machine guns. You haven't been properly warm since September. Your socks rotted off weeks ago, and your feet look like something from a medical textbook's nightmare chapter. Supply problems that were annoying in France become deadly serious now. Winter gear arrives in drips and drabs, one glove here, half a blanket there. You're still wearing the same uniform you landed in, now held together by mud, prayer, and salvaged German gear. Everyone's got at least one piece of Wehrmacht equipment. Their stuff is better designed for their weather. A German winter coat doesn't make you a Nazi, just slightly less likely to freeze to death. The trench foot epidemic gets so bad they threaten court-martials for not changing socks. Except you don't have dry socks to change into. The medics do what they can, which isn't much. You watch tough guys who survived Omaha cry like babies as medics peel dead skin off their feet. Some lose toes, others lose whole feet. The lucky ones just can't walk for a few weeks. Everyone's feet hurt all the time now, a constant background pain that makes every step a small victory. Then comes December 16th, and all hell breaks loose in the Ardennes. You're not there, still stuck in the Hürtgen meat grinder. But news filters through that the Germans have launched a massive offensive. Panzers rolling through the morning fog. American units surrounded, overrun, surrendering. Some desk jockey's brilliant idea to hold the line with exhausted divisions and green replacements just got 20,000 guys killed or captured. The word Malmedy starts circulating. Something about SS troops and massacred prisoners. Suddenly, those German coats don't seem like such a good idea. Your division gets pulled out of the Hürtgen and thrown south to help stem the German tide. The retreat, strategic withdrawal, is chaos incarnate. Roads clogged with vehicles, refugees, and deserters all mixed together. MPs at crossroads trying to sort out real Americans from German infiltrators in US uniforms. Everyone's asking everyone else about baseball scores and Betty Grable's measurements. Get the answer wrong and you might get shot. One replacement doesn't know who won the '43 World Series and spends 6 hours under guard until someone vouches for him. The weather is biblical in its awfulness. Temperature drops to -20. Your breath freezes on your scarf until you're wearing an ice mask. Weapons freeze solid. You piss on your rifle bolt to free it up, then worry about it freezing worse. Sea rations turn into blocks of ice you chip at with bayonets. Some genius discovers you can thaw them on vehicle engines, leading to the surreal sight of infantrymen cooking beans on tank manifolds while Germans shoot at them. You dig in along a ridgeline whose name you can't pronounce, part of the northern shoulder containing the German breakthrough. The Germans come at night. white camouflaged in the snow while you're still in olive drab. Their tanks grind forward, infantry clinging to the sides. Your bazooka team claims they hit a Tiger tank 3 times without penetrating. The 4th shot finally does something, but the crew bails out and disappears into the forest. Everything's white, snow, muzzle flashes, the faces of frozen dead. Historians still debate whether the Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's last gamble or just postponing the inevitable. What you know is that Christmas 1944 is spent in a frozen hole, eating snow because your canteen's a block of ice, watching tracer rounds light up the forest like the world's deadliest holiday decorations. Some rear echelon chaplain broadcasts a Christmas message about peace on earth. You'd laugh if your face wasn't too frozen to move. The German offensive finally runs out of steam, fuel, and bodies. By late January, you're pushing them back, following the trail of abandoned vehicles and equipment. Frozen German corpses litter the roads, some stripped of boots and coats by desperate civilians, or desperate GIs. Survival trumps decency when it's 20 below. You stop judging anyone for anything. Making it through each day is moral victory enough. By February, you're back on the offensive, but something's broken in your unit. Too many faces gone, too many close calls, too many frozen nights wondering if you'll see spring. The new replacements look impossibly young and clean. They still flinch at the wrong things and don't flinch at what will kill them. You've stopped learning their names until they survive a week. It's not cruel, just practical. The arithmetic of survival doesn't include emotional attachments to dead men walking. The Battle of the Bulge finally ends in late January 1945, with the Germans pushed back to their starting positions minus about 100,000 men they couldn't spare. Your unit gets exactly 3 days to rest and refit before the next bright idea from headquarters, cross the Rhine River and drive into the heart of Germany. The Rhine's been Germany's moat since Roman times. The Germans blow every bridge as they retreat, leaving you staring at 1,000 feet of very cold, very fast water with extremely unhappy Germans on the far side. March brings the kind of military chaos that would be comedy if people weren't dying. Engineers try to build pontoon bridges while German artillery uses them for target practice. One bridge gets 90% complete before a single shell sends the whole thing downstream. The engineers, hardcore men who've been doing this since Africa, just shrug and start over. They're either the bravest or craziest soldiers you've met. Possibly both. Then someone captures a bridge intact at Remagen. The Germans spend the next week throwing everything at it. Artillery, bombs, frogmen with explosives, probably some strongly worded letters. Your division crosses at night on a swaying pontoon bridge, while German shells walk up and down the river looking for you. The trick is not to think about what happens if a shell finds the bridge while you're on it, or what that dark water would feel like in March, or how much your gear weighs. Just keep walking and don't look down. Once across, it's a strange new war. You're in Germany proper now, and the rules have changed. French civilians gave you wine and flowers. German civilians give you sullen stares and hasty assurances that they never supported Hitler. Honest. Every house supposedly hid resistance fighters. Nobody knows where the concentration camps were. Amazing how an entire nation can develop selective amnesia overnight. The German army is collapsing but still dangerous, like a rabid dog in its death throes. Some units fight to the last bullet. Others surrender en masse, looking relieved it's over. You capture a group of Volkssturm, Hitler's last-ditch militia of old men and young boys. The soldiers include a 60-year-old with a wooden leg and a kid who can't be older than 14. The kid still trying to look fierce while his rifle shakes in his hands. You give him a chocolate bar and he breaks down crying. Villages blur together in a parade of white flags and nicht schießen, don't shoot. Smart Germans hang bedsheets from their windows. Dumb ones take pot shots and get their towns leveled. You've stopped feeling sorry for them. These people cheered when France fell, celebrated when London burned. Now they want mercy? Your unit's translator, a Jewish refugee from Brooklyn, has some very specific opinions about German mercy that he shares at volume. The liberation of German POW camps provides an education in Wehrmacht hospitality. American and British prisoners look like skeletons, telling stories of starvation rations and forced marches. Soviet prisoners. There aren't many Soviet prisoners left to liberate. The Germans didn't bother feeding them. You find mass graves behind every large camp, thousands of bodies in various states of decay. The German camp commandant insists he was just following orders. A sergeant from Texas breaks his nose. Improving international relations. Speed becomes everything now. The word is the Russians are racing for Berlin from the east. And nobody wants to die capturing territory that'll end up in Soviet hands anyway. You're making 30, 40 miles a day when the roads are clear. German resistance is sporadic. Fanatical SS units that fight like cornered rats. Then regular army units that surrender before you finish surrounding them. The smart Germans are all heading west, preferring American captivity to whatever the Russians have planned. You're constantly exhausted, running on benzodrine pills and adrenaline. Sleep comes in 2-hour chunks in moving vehicles. Hot food is a memory from another lifetime. You eat captured German rations, better than yours, annoyingly. Sleep in abandoned houses, checking for booby traps first. And wear whatever keeps you warm. Your uniform is more patches than original fabric. You haven't seen your reflection in weeks and don't want to. Historians still argue about Eisenhower's broad front strategy versus letting Patton race for Berlin. What you know is that by April, Germany is clearly finished. Dead horses litter the roads. The Wehrmacht reduced to animal transport while you ride in trucks. German jets occasionally scream overhead. Too little, too late. You capture warehouses full of wonder weapons that might have mattered in 1943. Now they're just expensive junk. The German countryside is weirdly beautiful when you're not being shot at. Medieval towns with their walls intact. Forests that haven't been shelled into matchsticks. It looks like a fairy tale. If you ignore the burned-out tanks and fresh graves, you requisition a house from a German family who insist they hate Hitler while his portrait still hangs in their parlor. The grandmother mutters darkly in German while you track mud on her precious floors. Sorry, lady. Should have thought of that before starting a world war. April 1945 brings you to a place that will haunt you forever. The smell hits first. Sweet, cloying, wrong. Then you see the fence, the watchtowers, the sign, Dachau. You've heard rumors about camps, dismissed half as propaganda. But this is real, and it's worse than any rumor. The survivors who meet you at the gates don't look human anymore. Skeletons wrapped in striped rags, eyes huge in shrunken faces. They try to cheer but can barely stand. Some kiss your boots, others just stare, unable to believe it's real. Inside the camp, your brain refuses to process what you're seeing. Bodies stacked like cordwood, the crematorium with ash still warm, barracks where humans were packed tighter than your worst troopship experience, the medical block with its experiments, a sergeant from your unit, tough guy who's been through everything since D-Day, sits down in the mud and cries, Nobody judges him. Half your unit is crying or vomiting or both. The German guards you capture insist they're not responsible, just following orders, didn't know, never participated. Your translator, the Jewish kid from Brooklyn, beats one unconscious before anyone can stop him. The lieutenant doesn't even pretend to file charges. Some of the SS guards don't make it to prisoner collection points. Officially, they were shot trying to escape. Unofficially, nobody asks too many questions. After what you've seen, due process seems like a luxury the Nazis didn't earn. You try to help the survivors, but everything you do seems wrong. Give them food. Their stomachs can't handle it, and they die. Give them water. They drink too much and die. The medics work around the clock, but people who've been systematically starved for years don't just bounce back. They die of freedom. Their bodies too broken to handle survival. Each death feels like a personal failure, like you arrived too late to matter. The local German civilians claim they didn't know. The camp is 2 miles from town. The smell carries farther than that. But sure, they didn't know. Your commander organizes mandatory tours, making every adult in town walk through the camp, see the bodies, smell the death. Some faint, others vomit. A few maintain their ignorance until forced to help bury the dead. Then they know. They all know now. You can't stay at Dachau. The war's not over, but you can't really leave either. What you've seen has fundamentally changed something. Those weeks in the hedgerows, the frozen hell of the Bulge, even Omaha Beach, that was war, brutal, terrible, but comprehensible. This is something else. This is what you've been fighting against. Even if you didn't fully understand it until now, every German soldier who surrenders now gets a different look. Were you one of them? Did you know? Did you help? The advance continues, but it's different now. Your unit moves through Bavaria like avenging angels. No more hearts and minds. German Burgermeister complains about requisitioned houses. Show him photos from Dachau. German family upset about confiscated food. Tell them about the walking skeletons you're trying to feed. The gloves are off, figuratively speaking. Actually, literally too. You're wearing German gloves because their supply system still works better than yours. Resistance crumbles everywhere. You capture entire divisions. Thousands of men materializing from forests with white flags. The German army is running west as fast as it can, desperate to surrender to Americans instead of Soviets. You process so many prisoners that you run out of camps to put them in. Massive fields full of defeated Wehrmacht, guarded by a couple of bored GIs with machine guns. The prisoners aren't going anywhere. Where would they go? Their country is dying. You meet the Russians at the Elbe River on April 25th. They're nothing like you expected. Wild, drunk, driving American-made Studebaker trucks and wearing a mixture of uniforms that makes your ragtag outfit look parade-ready. They break out vodka at 10 a.m. and consider you rude for not matching them shot for shot. Through translators and gestures, you compare notes. They've seen camps too. Worse ones. They've been fighting since 1941. They hate Germans with a pure, distilled hatred that makes your anger look like mild irritation. Historians still debate whether the Western Allies should have raced for Berlin. What you know is that nobody in your unit wants to die capturing a city the Russians have surrounded. Let them have it. Let them pay the butcher's bill. You've seen enough death. The word is Hitler's holed up in his bunker, giving orders to armies that don't exist anymore. Good. Let him rot. Let the Russians dig him out. By early May, it's clearly over. German units surrender faster than you can process them. You're guarding a depot full of German weapons when some SS colonel arrives, demanding properly military surrender terms for his unit. Your lieutenant, 23 years old and aged 50 by combat. Laughs in his face. You want terms? Here's your terms. Surrender or die. Choose quick. I haven't had breakfast. The colonel chooses wisely. Even the SS know when the game's up. May 8th, 1945. VE Day. The war in Europe is officially over. You're sitting in what used to be a German barracks, trying to process the fact that nobody's actively trying to kill you for the first time in 11 months. The celebration is weirdly muted. Sure, guys are drinking everything they can find. German schnapps, French champagne, some horrific local moonshine that might be industrial solvent. But it's not the wild party you imagined. Too many empty bunks. Too many names that won't be celebrating anything ever again. Your unit's down to maybe 20% of the guys who hit Omaha Beach. The rest are dead, wounded, or rotated home as head cases. You do the math of your original landing craft. Exactly 3 of you are still here. Thompson made it, minus 2 fingers and most of his hearing. Rodriguez is still kicking, though he hasn't smiled since Hurtgen. Everyone else is a replacement for a replacement for a replacement. You're a veteran now, one of the old guys at the ancient age of 22. The first weeks of occupation are surreal. You're billeted in a German house, whose owners flee to the basement whenever you appear. They've left family photos on the mantel. Hans in his Wehrmacht uniform. Little Greta in her Hitler Youth outfit. Real nice family. You sleep in their bed, eat off their plates, and try not to think about where Hans might be buried or what Greta learned at those meetings. This is what victory looks like. Living in your enemy's house while they cower downstairs. Your duties are a strange mix of policeman, judge, and janitor. Morning might be arresting a Nazi mayor who swears he was secretly anti-Hitler. Afternoon is supervising German civilians filling in tank traps they dug with such enthusiasm last year. Evening is guard duty at the DP camp, trying to keep desperate people from killing each other over rumors of food shipments. DPs, displaced persons, bureaucratic speak for the millions of slaves the Germans imported to run their factories and farms. Now they all want to go home, except half their homes don't exist anymore. The denazification process is a joke. Every German you meet was apparently part of the resistance. Nobody supported Hitler. Those party memberships, forced at gunpoint. That SS tattoo, a youthful mistake. Your translator interviews a school principal who claims she never taught Nazi ideology. Right. That's why her classroom still has "The Jews are our misfortune" painted on the wall. She says it was for historical context. You make her scrub it off with her bare hands. The point system becomes your new obsession. The army's decided who goes home based on points, months overseas, combat decorations, wounds, dependents. You've got enough points to rotate home by September, maybe August if you're lucky. Guys start computing points like actuaries. If I get married by mail, that's 12 points. A bronze star is 5. Maybe I should volunteer for one more patrol. Someone always volunteers for one more patrol and doesn't come back. The war's over, but people keep dying. Accidents, suicides, revenge killings nobody investigates too hard. German civilians are a pathetic bunch now that their 1,000-year Reich lasted 12. They grovel for food, cigarettes, anything. Their money's worthless. Their cities are rubble. Their men are dead or in camps. You'd feel sorry for them if you hadn't seen Dachau. Instead, you trade their family heirlooms for chocolate and feel zero guilt. That antique clock that's been in their family for generations, worth about 2 packs of Lucky Strikes. Those silver candlesticks hidden in the garden. Congratulations, They just bought you a bottle of real American whiskey from the quartermaster's black market. You pull guard duty at Nuremberg, where the big Nazis await trial. Goering's lost 100 pounds and his swagger. Hess pretends to be crazy. They all claim they were just following orders. Didn't know about the camps. Were actually trying to help. Your orders are not to talk to them. But one night Goering tries to buddy up, soldier to soldier. You understand, he says in broken English. Following orders, yes? You tell him to shut the fuck up. He does. Fraternization rules break down immediately, officially. You're not supposed to talk to German civilians beyond official duties. Unofficially, lonely GIs and desperate Fräuleins find ways around the rules. Your buddy Thompson falls for a German girl who swears her father died fighting Hitler. Turns out he died fighting in Hitler's army on the Eastern Front. But Thompson doesn't seem to care about the distinction anymore. War's over. Everybody's lonely. Morality gets flexible when tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Historians still argue about the occupation's successes and failures. What you know is that by July, you're tired of playing conquistador. Tired of Germans, tired of ruins, tired of the smell that still clings to your uniforms, death and cordite and failure. The news from the Pacific says they're preparing to invade Japan. Thank Christ your points mean you won't be part of that. Let someone else have their turn at dying for democracy. August brings the atomic bomb and sudden end to the Pacific War. You're in Munich when the news breaks, watching German civilians pretend they're not relieved they didn't get nuked instead. One old professor type mutters that Germany was developing similar weapons. Sure they were. Fritz. That's why you're eating American handouts while Tokyo gets vaporized. The second bomb drops on Nagasaki, and everyone understands this is a new world now. War just got an upgrade nobody asked for. Your replacement finally arrives, some kid fresh from the States who still has that basic training enthusiasm. He asks endless questions about combat, disappointed when your answers are mostly, keep your head down and pray. He wants heroic stories. You tell him about the time you shit yourself during an artillery barrage and nobody noticed because everyone else did too. That's heroism in the real war, maintaining basic human dignity while everything explodes around you. He stops asking questions after that. The point system finally works in your favor. Orders come through. Report to Le Havre for transportation home. Just like that, it's over. You pack your few possessions. A Luger you're not supposed to have. Some German medals traded for cigarettes. That photo of Betty that survived everything. Your unit throws a half-hearted farewell party. Everyone's too used to goodbyes to make it special. Thompson's staying. Not enough points. Plus that German girl. Rodriguez is heading home next month. You shake hands. Promise to write. No, you probably won't. The train ride across France is a victory lap in reverse. Those same villages you liberated a year ago, now trying to rebuild. The French are less enthusiastic now. Liberation's afterglow has faded into the reality of occupation and rationing. Still, old men tip their hats and young women wave. You pass through Paris without stopping, catching a glimpse of the Eiffel Tower through dirty train windows. Seems like a lifetime ago you were kissing French girls on the Champs-Élysées. Le Havre is a circus of homebound GIs. The port's been rebuilt just enough to function. German POWs doing the heavy lifting under American supervision. There's something satisfying about watching former Wehrmacht soldiers load your ship home. They're skinny and defeated. Nothing like the supermen who terrorized Europe. Just tired men who want to go home too. Except their homes are mostly rubble now. Tough luck. Hans. You board another Liberty ship. This one designed for troops instead of converted from luxury. Still cramped. Still smells like fuel oil and vomit. But who cares? You're going home. The mood is different from that terrified crossing in 43. Everyone's lighter, even the ones missing pieces. A guy with one arm organizes a poker tournament. Someone finds a guitar and holds nightly sing-alongs on deck. You all carefully avoid the songs that remind you of the dead. The crossing takes 8 days of beautiful boredom. No submarine alerts, no zigzagging, just straight sailing toward home. You spend hours at the rail, watching the Atlantic roll by, trying to figure out who you are now. That scared kid who got drafted is gone. Left somewhere between Omaha Beach and Dachau. This version of you has seen too much, done too much. How do you explain that to people who think war is what John Wayne does in movies? Halfway across, you finally write Betty that letter you've been putting off. How do you tell your girl that you're not the same person who left? That you wake up screaming sometimes? That loud noises make you hit the deck? That you've done things that needed doing but weren't anything like heroic? You settle for, "I've changed some," and hope she can read between the lines. Maybe she has too. Maybe everyone has. Maybe that's just what war does. The Statue of Liberty appears through morning fog like a dream. Guys are crying openly now. Nobody caring about looking tough. You made it. You're home. The band on the dock plays "Don't Fence Me In" while you disembark, which seems ironically appropriate after 2 years of following orders. A Red Cross girl hands you coffee and donuts, asks if you need anything. You need about 1,000 things, starting with a way to forget half of what you remember. But you just take the donut and say thanks. Historians still debate the psychological impact on returning veterans. What you know is that you feel like a stranger in your own country. Everything's too bright, too loud, too normal. People complain about meat rationing while you remember fighting over cans of cold beans. They gripe about gas shortages while you remember siphoning fuel from burning tanks. But you don't say anything. How could they understand? They shouldn't have to understand. Processing at Camp Kilmer is a blur of medical exams, paperwork, and lectures about readjusting to civilian life. Some psychiatrists ask if you have any troubling memories you'd like to discuss. You almost laugh. Which ones? The friends who died, the enemies you killed, the camps, the whole fucking war. You tell him you're fine, eager to get home. He checks a box, stamps your papers, just like that. You're a civilian again, except you're not. Not really. You never will be again. The train home takes 2 days, and you spend most of it staring out windows at an America that looks impossibly clean and untouched. No bomb craters, no burned-out tanks, no rubble. Just fields and towns and people living their lives like the world didn't just spend 6 years tearing itself apart. A kid at one station asks to see your medals. You show him, and he asks if you killed any Nazis. His mother drags him away, scolding. You want to tell her yes, quite a few actually, and they didn't die like movie villains. They died crying for their mothers, just like Americans did. Your hometown looks exactly the same, which seems wrong somehow. The same elm trees on Main Street, the same drugstore where you had sodas after school, the same everything, like it's been frozen in amber while you were gone aging 100 years. Your mother meets you at the station. She looks older, greyer, smaller than you remember. She cries into your chest while you stand there awkwardly, not sure how to be a son anymore after being a soldier so long. Home is a museum of who you used to be. Your room still has those baseball pennants, that model airplane you built in high school. It belongs to some other kid, one who thought war would be an adventure. You lie in your own bed, too soft after years of ground and cots, and stare at the ceiling, unable to sleep without the sound of other men breathing around you. When you do sleep, you dream of hedgerows and wake up reaching for a rifle that isn't there. Betty comes by the next day. She's beautiful and sweet and talks about movies you haven't seen and songs you haven't heard. She wants to know everything but also nothing. She asks about Paris but not about what happened after. She notices you flinch when a car backfires but pretends not to. You try to kiss her like you used to, but it feels like play acting. She tastes like innocence and lipstick and a world that doesn't include Dachau. You can see in her eyes she knows something's broken between you. Neither of you knows how to fix it. The welcome home parade happens on Saturday. The whole town turns out to honor their boys. You march down Main Street in your uniform, which fits loose now. You're 20 pounds lighter than when you left. The high school band plays Sousa marches badly. People wave flags and cheer. The mayor gives a speech about sacrifice and democracy. You stand there sweating in the sun, thinking about Thompson still in Germany and Rodriguez who should be home by now, and all the others who aren't marching in any parades. You try to get back to normal, whatever that means. Your old job at the factory is waiting. But standing at a drill press seems pointless after what you've done. Your hands that can field strip a rifle in the dark fumble with simple machinery. The foreman, 4F because of flat feet, tells you to focus. You want to tell him about focusing while machine guns traverse your position, but you just nod and try harder. You last 3 weeks before quitting. The VA office is supposed to help, but it's staffed by people who've never heard a shot fired in anger. They offer pamphlets about vocational training and small business loans. The GI Bill will pay for college. They say enthusiastically, you can be anything, lawyer, doctor, engineer. All you have to do is sit in classrooms with kids who think Normandy is just a place in France. The thought of it exhausts you. You take the forms anyway, figuring maybe education will fill whatever's hollow inside you now. Drinking helps, sort of. The American Legion Hall becomes your second home. At least there, everyone understands why you need 3 shots of whiskey before you can relax. You swap stories that get funnier with each telling, editing out the parts about stepping over pieces of friends. Nobody mentions the camps. Nobody talks about the German kids you shot because they were wearing uniforms and carrying rifles. You all just drink and pretend it was worth it. Your father tries to connect, talking about his war, the great one, the one that was supposed to end all this. He shows you his old uniform, his medals, tells cleaned-up stories about the Argonne. You realize he's been doing this dance for 25 years, pretending he came back whole. You wonder if his nightmares are trenches, while yours are hedgerows. Different wars, same damage. He pours you both whiskey, and you drink in companionable silence. 2 generations of men pretending to be okay. Historians argue about whether the GI Bill and post-war prosperity helped veterans readjust. What you know is that no government program can erase what you've seen. You go to the movies and watch John Wayne win the war single-handed. The audience cheers when he mows down enemies who die cleanly, bloodlessly. You leave halfway through and throw up in the alley, remembering what machine guns really do to human bodies. Betty finds you there. She doesn't ask why. She's learning not to ask why. By Christmas 1945, you've settled into an uneasy routine. You're taking classes at the State College, studying business because it seems practical and doesn't require thinking about anything that matters. Your classmates are kids who complain about exam schedules, while you remember men complaining about trench foot turning their toes black. You sit in the back, say little, get decent grades because compared to surviving the bulge, accounting is simple. Nobody asks about the war anymore. They've learned you won't give them the stories they want. Betty finally breaks it off in January. She tries to be gentle, says you need time to find yourself again. What she means is she's tired of dating a ghost. You can't blame her. The boy who wrote her love letters from training camp is buried somewhere between Normandy and Bavaria. She cries. You don't. You haven't cried since Dachau. And you're not starting now. You give her back the photo she gave you, the one that survived the whole war. Seems like it belongs to her story, not yours. Letters trickle in from the guys. Thompson married his German girl, living in Munich working for the occupation government. Says the ruins are almost beautiful in the snow. Rodriguez made it home, but his wife left him. Couldn't handle the nightmares and the drinking. He's using his GI benefits to study engineering, throwing himself into equations that have definite answers, unlike everything else. Other letters bring news of suicides, car wrecks that might not be accidents, bar fights that went too far. The war keeps claiming casualties long after the shooting stopped. You get a job at the new Chrysler plant, working nights so you can attend classes during the day. The assembly line is monotonous but oddly soothing. Install part A into slot B. Repeat 8 hours. No decisions. No moral ambiguity. No wondering if that German kid you shot really had a weapon, or if your eyes were playing tricks in the dark. Your hands remember mechanical repetition. It's almost peaceful, except for when the factory whistle sounds like an air raid siren, and you have to remind yourself you're in Michigan, not Munich. Spring arrives, and with it, a kind of thaw in your frozen emotions. You meet a girl named Helen at the college library. She's studying to be a teacher, has a smile that doesn't ask questions about why you sometimes stare at nothing. Her brother was in the Pacific, came back different too. She understands the value of silence, of not probing wounds that haven't healed. You take her to movies, comedies only, and dinner at quiet restaurants where sudden noises won't send you under the table. The nightmares are getting better. Now you only wake up screaming once or twice a week instead of nightly. Your mother has stopped running to your room, learned to let you work through it alone. You've developed tricks, a nightlight so you know immediately where you are, a glass of water to wash away the taste of cordite that isn't really there, a photo of your college campus to remind you this is real, and that was then. It's not perfect, but it's progress. You run into your old drill sergeant at a VA hospital where you're getting your hearing checked. Too many artillery barrages have left you with a permanent ring in your ears. He's in a wheelchair now, left his legs somewhere in the Philippines. You expect him to be bitter, but he seems almost serene. We made it home, he says. That's more than a lot of boys got. You want to ask if it gets easier, carrying all these ghosts, but his eyes tell you what you already know. You don't get over it. You just get used to it. By summer, you found a rhythm. School, work, Helen, sleep, repeat. You're not the same person you were before the war, but you're not the hollow shell who came home either. You're something in between, someone new. You laugh at Helen's jokes, help your mother with groceries, play catch with neighborhood kids who want to hear war stories you'll never tell. You're functioning, which is its own kind of victory. The world moves on around you. The factory shifts to peacetime production, cars instead of tanks, hope instead of horror. Your professors talk about the bright future, the American century, the peace dividend. You nod along, knowing that peace is more complicated than they think. It's not just the absence of war. It's learning to live with what war did to you, finding meaning in a world that asked you to kill and then expected you to come home and be normal. You graduate in 1948, marry Helen in 49, have kids in the 50s. You don't talk about the war much, just sometimes late at night when the memories won't stay buried. Helen holds you through the nightmares, never asking for details you can't give. Your children grow up knowing Daddy was in the war, but not what that means. Good. Let them keep their innocence. You paid for it with yours. Decades later, they'll call you the greatest generation, build monuments, make movies that simplify your complicated war into tales of unambiguous heroism. You'll attend reunions where old men cry over fading memories and argue about details that seemed life or death important then. You'll visit the cemetery in Normandy, find names you haven't thought of in years, wonder why them and not you. There's never an answer. Just luck and time and the weight of survival. You're home now. Really home. After the longest journey imaginable. The physical distance from Normandy to Nebraska was nothing compared to the distance between who you were and who you became. That scared kid with the draft notice transformed into something harder and sadder, but also stronger. You learned that humans can endure almost anything, inflict almost anything, and somehow still find ways to love and laugh and continue. The war shaped you, but didn't define you. You came back and built a life on the ruins of your innocence, married a good woman, raised decent kids, worked honest jobs. The nightmares faded to occasional echoes. The memories softened at the edges while staying sharp at the core. You learned to live with ghosts, to honor the dead by living well. Now it's late, and tomorrow is another day in the life you built from the ashes of war. Your grandson asked you today what you did in the war, and you told him what you always tell curious children. I did my job and came home. It's not the whole truth, but it's all the truth they need. The rest stays locked inside, shared only with other old soldiers who understand that some stories are too heavy for civilian ears. You close your eyes, feeling that old familiar drift toward sleep. Tonight, maybe you'll dream of Helen's smile or your grandchildren's laughter instead of hedgerows and horror. Either way, you'll wake tomorrow and continue the journey that began with a draft notice and never really ended. Because coming home from war isn't a destination. It's a process that lasts a lifetime. You're still traveling, still finding your way back. One day at a time, sleep comes gently now, a luxury you never take for granted. In your dreams, you're young again, but wiser, walking through French fields where poppies grow over old battlegrounds. The ghosts are there but peaceful, just fellow travelers on the long road home. You've made your peace with them and with yourself. The war is over. You survived. That has to be enough, because in the end, that's all any soldier can do. Survive, remember, and try to build something good from the ruins. You've done all three. The boy who left for war never came back, but the man who returned found ways to honor both the living and the dead. It wasn't the life you planned, but it was the life you earned with blood and luck and stubborn persistence.